Along here with me is Shai, who's my partner in crime, CTO of the company, co-founder, and actually the one who makes things working. I'm the one who's making things talking. It's two different things. So yes, we basically in the next 45 minutes, we would like to discuss, who owns policies in the security space? Are my policies even enforced in principle? Do I even know it? Why often it fails? We see it from hundreds of customers we've been speaking with. What is required to actually enforce policies, to have visibility to that? And later on, what is the role of metrics in that? It's going to be not a long presentation. And then the second part, we will do a short demo that we will show you how it's done. And we will leave plenty of time for questions. You have the Q&A space where you can feel free just to pop any questions you have, and from time to time I will stop to address them. We have here with us CISOs, BISOs, GRC audience and the crowd, really people who've been doing and working on the interfaces between metrics and policies quite some time, or this is what they do usually. Who owns policies? We all know how security stack looks like, scattered dozens of tools that has a very rich data. But once we're looking at who's owning policies, we will usually have three different groups. So the first group is the head of the programs. They owning the tools, they have their SMEs, or they're operating by themselves, maybe with third parties. In some cases, but usually it's a team that is working on those tools, and they have really the first interface to the data of that can help us then understand how policies are being enforced. But then there are two other groups, which is the GRC teams and the CISO office, who are accountable for policy enforcement, and they need to look at that. But we're sort of in this situation where you have the data in one place and the policies in another place, and you need to connect them. And maybe there's different interpretations, and there's also some other gaps that we usually see when we're discussing who owns policies. And usually this is something that it's sort of like, either getting dust in a desk or in a virtual folder, or actually being implemented. But how do we connect those two together? We'll get to that in a bit. So are my policies being enforced? This is a major question. It's a question that is coming and being driven from dozens of different tools, MFAs, vulnerabilities, offboarding processes, endpoint coverage. Do I meet MTTR? Do I meet the MTTR I've set for myself, or do I meet the MTTR that I've written in the policy documentation of the company? Or do I meet the MTTR I reported to my customers and maybe third parties I'm working with? So it's sort of a very broad questions, different tools, different answers sometimes, and we need to really understand that. How do you get, the granularity of those questions? This is something that we see that is often not being met, but actually not even properly tied to get some proper understanding on those phases. And then you maybe want to double click, maybe you do get the answer. So let's say your 85% of your team actually does have MFA, but do we know who from them are admins, for instance? And if boarding was complete in the previous quarter, and you just want to have a look maybe at the past 30 days, how do you quickly change the data just to get that sneak peek on the data? And if we are discussing vulnerabilities, are we discussing a specific exploitability score? Is that a CVE we are measuring, a CVSS according to EPSS? How do we get that type of colors we need when we are looking for answers when it's coming to the policies that we are looking to enforce? So eventually what we're seeing is sort of like everything got stuck because I have so many questions. I want to double click on the data. Usually it's stuck someplace, but it's hard for me to actually go and do that. And it just yields in one big headache. And usually I'm just, either dropping that or settles with the information that is coming from a very narrow lens that I'm not necessarily able to question or develop discussion on top of. And why is that? So, one, yes, we have the data. The data is there, but there is no clear standard of how actually to measure that. The data is siloed. And then maybe something I'd like to touch upon is the drivers for policy enforcement. Well, when we started as a relatively young company, we created our documentation. It was in order to satisfy regulations and certifications and make sure that they're happy. And then I'm coming to the real world and I have customers I need to serve, and they're looking at the whole different drivers and level of expectations, which is not necessarily aligned with what was in that document. And we're seeing the gap between, I'm calling it again, that pile of papers or the folders of the policies with reality. Those are different drivers. And then usually I may want to also take it to one notch deeper and basically be able to then report it to others, to auditors, to the board. Am I improving my policies? Or it went maybe the other direction. I need maybe more team to help me enforce my policies. So those drivers are usually something that is hard to combine together. So other like the ingredients that we want to be able to see. So one, we have several users or several people that may be accountable for different pieces of that. We have the data piece. We know we have it. We know the policies because we've written that, or we know the different constraints and stakeholders looking for different policies. And we may have measurements or metrics. And if we have those components, then we can probably be in a better infrastructure to start enforcing policies. But metrics are hard, and metrics are cumbersome. And metrics is something that usually when we as security professionals look at, we are thinking, that's going to take a lot of time for my team. Why is that? Because this is how most of the industry is looking at metrics. It's manual, it's time consuming. I need to pull resources from actually working on improving security to actually help me ingest data. And it's something that really takes away a lot of efforts to the level that we're just putting it aside rather than make it a tool that we can use. What we would like to propose is a different view of how metrics can be done in a way that's not just going to become something which is hard, but something that will make everybody's life much, much easier and much, much more convenient to work and improve the company communication, collaboration, and how we can better enforce policies. So what we are introducing, or what we have implemented in several of our customers, is a new standard of metrics. Very simple principles. I'll give you one example, and then you can probably see it more in the demo environment. One metric or measurement, instead of being a point in time, needs to be continuous. I'd like to do this once I've set it up once. I want to be able to see that time and again. I want to be able to see it over time. I want to be able to go back in time to see how well I've been doing. I want to see it in the right context. If I'm looking at vulnerabilities, I want to be able to compare different BUs, for instance. So how do I break vulnerabilities to different components? How do I take my employees who are doing security training and break them into different grouping? That may be needed to be done from taking data from different sources. I want it to be flexible. I want to see it once in a quarterly way, maybe for past 30 days, and maybe I just want to, quick check on what happened in the past 6 days or 7 days. So I want to be able to be flexible in the data. It also can be in a more meaningful way. I want to be able to see all clouds. I want to be able to zoom in on a specific cloud, or I want to be able to see all my projects that I have in the code, but maybe I just want to see it in a specific project. So this is the type of flexibility I want to be able to see. Unified is really the ability to see the data that you've already been putting in one place. Already someone did the work for you, and the next, maybe the latter, is the ability to make it actionable and take an action plan out of it. So just maybe one example. If I'm looking at MTTR for CVEs, I'm looking at over time. I can see the breakdown of it. But maybe I want to be able to see it in different classification. I want to be able to see it in a different severity. I want to be able to see specific information from that. This is something we can offer. The next part, I also want to be able to tie to that measurement a threshold. So that threshold would then help me understand if I'm good or bad, or if I'm meeting the policies. So once I'm taking all this paperwork and I'm putting that into the policies here, you can now actually start benchmarking yourself against those policies. The unified and the actionable piece, this is something which is taking a lot of work off the teams, is the ability really to see environments in a much broader landscape. For instance, let's take a very common example, my offboarding processes. HR is taking care of those processes, but I'd like to see whether my checklist has been done and everybody's been offboarded from the different tools. So I'd like to take a reporting termination data along with the users and be able to see if there are any discrepancies and if that was done. Same goes for coverage. I have Kenji, I have CrowdStrike. Can I blend this data into one place and be able to see if there are any gaps, not only for one source, but actually from several sources? So those are the type of enrichment and type of work that needs to be taken into account once we are shifting from Excels into a very dynamic space of metrics. Once we are setting this ground, we can now start putting it into actually making the metrics work for us, opposed to the previous processes of we work for the metrics themselves. If there are any questions, feel free to raise. I'm seeing the presentation, so I'm not really seeing if there are any questions. Happy to, someone just to wave or tell me, and I'm happy to pose here. Nothing good. I will then continue. So what I'd like to do in the next few minutes is to walk us through on actually how we're doing this. Let me take this out and jump into here. And basically show you how this is done over the platform of Symmetrics. When we have started Symmetrics, one of the main thing we're seeing when we're talking about the benchmark of the industry or how good am I doing, you usually get a number or a letter, A, B, C, and you don't really know what does it mean. So what we have done is we have taken the metrics and we have tied it into the policies. So if I'm looking at our dashboard, my overall score as a company is 5.4. This basically means I'm meeting a specific set of policies. And from here, I can basically extract an action plan that will help me improve my performance to be able to meet those policies. What are we actually building here? So this may be the overall score, but every score is coming from a subset of different boards. And those boards are a mix of two spaces. If you can look here to the left, one are out-of-the-box security metrics, all built as the way security programs are being built. And the other are what we call custom boards, which actually soon will be launched as a template, sneak peek to the future of what we're doing, basically to help you to get templates of a lot of things we would like to enforce. Because as I mentioned earlier, I have my own policies. I may have different policies for other stakeholders I need to satisfy, and I have different lenses I'd like to measure. So the basic building blocks are metrics from a routine routine structure of a security organization. Maybe let's take an example. I'd like to look, but maybe just before even that, I would say each of those boards, 100% of the time, is a mix of several tools. Very rare occasions we're seeing just one tool supporting a product, a program, and this is the type of joining and correlation of data we are doing behind the scenes, simply to put the customer on a higher ground than doing the nitty-gritty job by themselves. So if I'm going to go into vulnerabilities, I'm a 6.4. It's a set of different infrastructure, code, asset manager that we're looking at, all part of the vulnerabilities. And now that I'm going one step inside, I'm actually seeing that my vulnerability space is assembled from 3 different regions. This is part of the ability we're taking from the asset management along with the vulnerabilities, and we are breaking it down. So we have the score, we know how to improve it, we know who's probably the weakest link, and I may want to keep an eye so I can help them improve a bit more moving forward. And the first question, again, everybody asks me, so Shirley, what is this 5.9 means? So if I'm clicking one notch deeper, I'm actually getting dozens out of the box metrics that helps me understand how am I doing against a specific set of policies. So you can see that we have here thresholds that are not exceeding a policy and some that are exceeding a policy. And the accumulation of it is driving my score. And this is the place I can actually go and later on improve that. So I would come to a specific area and get a list of action plan on how to go and improve that. But I want to stay in a bit more maybe high level still here. Let me just go quickly back to vulnerabilities. So I'm looking at all of those different metrics. I have all the data. Again, it's a mix of different products, top assets, but then I may want to be able, or top vulnerabilities, then I may want to change or tweak the information. So in this area, for instance, I want to be able to see what open findings I have in the infrastructure. Once I will click inside, I will get what we are calling a metric studio. And this is the place that we would like the whole organization understand, or the whole relevant stakeholder understand what exactly we are measuring. So this is, by the way, a key thing we realized. There is a miscommunication inside the organization, because once you're looking at a number, you really want to be able to analyze it and understand that you're discussing the same language. This is the unified piece of it. So we're looking at the WIS on specific vulnerabilities and specific status that was detected in specific period of time. But let's say, you know what, I want to be able to actually, I don't want to see the specific finding. I want to be able to classify it based on specific, on let's say, exploitability. So I can go in here. This is enrichment we are doing behind the scenes. And I can now look at a specific lens of exploitability and be able now to put a specific threshold on that specific measurements. This is something that we are seeing because eventually a threshold it can be specific to a specific use case. This is the place we want to be able to do that. Once we have set it, we've set the filters, we have set the threshold. Maybe a little footnote, Symmetrics provides our own best practices, recommendations for threshold, but we have enabled, or we are empowering our customers to do their own adaptations simply because it needs to be tied to the level of maturity. If we will end up having everything is failed because we just entered a new position and we have yet even to impact that, we want to be able to show how we are progressing on the policies over time, so you can change it in here and then be able to adapt it later on. So any questions on this? Someone should point me or tell me if there are any questions. Cool. So this was maybe the first main building block when we started Symmetrics, the ability to measure different security programs and time to a specific policy enforcement. But then the story became even more complicated. We have started to getting requests from customers that they want to be able to measure frameworks. They want to be able to measure risks. They may have questions they need to report to the board, like, are we secure? Are we secure eventually is a major question. We have customers who have been investing a lot in those type of questions that is assembled from different dozens of questions. So maybe we can take here. One of them is our IT assets secured within the industry standard. So if I'm going to go inside, there is an accumulation of different products, different metrics that are helping me respond to this question. And now the policies not only serves me a specific policy, it also helps me narrate stories and help different stakeholders inside the organization understand how well those policies are being enforced. This is something that every customer will be able to come and get out of the box in Symmetrics, but then can also come and create their own flavors using the left side, be able to add metrics, remove metrics, maybe prioritize what they care more or less, all the way to just, come in here, test, create a new board, maybe want to measure a new risk, and then just come up and create their own endless type of measurement. Let's call it new risk. And now look at the policies from the lens of a specific risk that may be emerging. I'm just gonna open this just to show how simple that you can come in here. Let's go to a specific board, let's say device management, add some new different tools in here, and simply start measuring and creating a new story, a new policy mindset on a specific risk that might have emerged over the weekend, all the way to measuring specific CVs that may be relevant for your environment. So yes, I'll stop the sharing in here. Shai, if you have anything to add, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think you touched most of the points, and I would like to add just a few notes about the technology behind the scenes and about the flexibility needed to answer different questions. So basically, I think that was one of the biggest challenges, because when you get a spreadsheet, you can see just the numbers, a snapshot of the numbers, but having a full data analysis tool that allows you to do that analysis dynamically in real time on all the data you have available, that's a major effort to build. And once you have symmetrics, you can do it very, very easily. So I think that's one of the things behind the scenes that we do, is we can get data from all sources, also from on-premise sources and static sources like files and existing DBs. And that's one of the challenges. And I think from the one of the other points that is really important is we hear that sometimes there are metrics that are reported to the executives that the team doesn't agree on. They see those metrics, they say, okay, you measure that specific in that specific way, but we don't prioritize that way. And creating that agreement on what we measure, what we report on, and what is our priorities, it's hard to do just in docs or just talking about it. But it's easy when you have data that you can look at together and say, this is what we're enforcing. And having a metric, filter, and a threshold that's summarize what the policy is and create that unified language across the team, which is very, very important, and probably the only way that you can share the priorities and also measure them ongoing and use that data and that language in every meeting that you have with the team. So that's my 2 cents here.
Sure. We have one question from Brian. I'm not sure if folks are seeing that, so I will quickly go over that, and then Shai, we can maybe discuss. It's a very interesting topic we're seeing several customers bring. So Brian's leadership wants him to measure risk exposure from different IT vendors and would be able to compare between them. If we can correlate data between exploited vulnerabilities, vendors, and on the different endpoints. And then the second part of the question is if we bring the business interpretation or damages cost into metrics. So I will actually start with the second part, and then Shai can take the first part. So the infrastructure that we are building has a lot of use cases, because eventually we are a platform helping do measurements, benchmark, also the information that eventually needs to be done for quantification. Risk quantification and cost is something that is more leaning or focusing in the financial part. We are busy and working in the infrastructure to surface information from operations to the strategy. So we can, and we actually had that collaboration in the past, we can collaborate with the risk quantification and putting the dollar into the risk. This is something we've done as a partnership in the past. But our main focus is eventually to allow the strategy of the organization to measure the organization and be able to improve it, to be able to report on that, to be able to prioritize risks. This is what we're focusing. And then Shai, if you want to shed more light on the first part.
Yeah, so the first part is talking about how we see how vulnerable we are to different vendors that we're using across the fleet in our endpoints. And I will add to that also application and packages you're using, right, from different vendors, and also the servers that you have that can be vulnerable to different uh, vulnerabilities that are coming from different vendors. So we do have those kind of metrics, obviously, that you can see the different vendors and accumulation of vulnerabilities across your assets. But I would just say that this is exactly what Symmetrics helps you do. You can ask any question you want to on top of that data, and that metric is um, is there or can be built so very quickly. And although you have some of the data in across the different tools that you have, right? If you have like an EDR or you have a vulnerability scanner that scan your cloud environment or your endpoints or your code, you can see that across different in the different tools, but you're never going to get one cohesive view that you can correlate um, all the vulnerabilities you have across all the vendors in all the environment, across all the tools, unless you do that yourself or using a tool that can do that for you. And I think this is where the big power is. The data exists, as Shirley mentioned. The policies are there, but how you bring everything together into metrics that tells that story. So the short answer is yes, we have those kind of metrics.
And maybe one point I forgot to or missed on Brian's questions about insurance. So when we started Symmetrics, and as I mentioned at the beginning, looking first, I can open back the environment just for you guys to have a look. So when we started building the out-of-the-box world, it started from the security organization space. And then we started doing the custom boards. And at the same mindset, we can now, let's say, come here and build a board for the insurance. Because what's happening usually with insurance metrics is eventually you need to respond to a set of questionnaires. You need to do this, let's say, once a month, once a year. But frankly, if you've done it 6 months ago, it doesn't mean that you're actually meeting those expectations now. So actually, if I'm an insurance, if I'm an insurance company, I'd like to make sure that my customers are applying or what they've reported on that day are actually consistent of what's happening, in the following months. And this is something we cannot see in Excel. And if, something happens and you want to be able to have the data points that, the week before something happened, everything was within the policies, this is a great way to be able to support that. Because otherwise, you might have responded to that 6 months ago, but you don't really know, or you cannot really support, or you can go now and try to collect all the evidence, and we know how cumbersome that's going to be, or you can just have it here and be able to prevent and see if the trend is going the other direction from the expected policy you need to have. So that's maybe, yes, Shai.
I just want to add a few things on top of what you just said. And I think this is you said about the insurance, you don't want to find out just a month before you need to renew the policy with the insurance company, to renew the contract with them, right? That you're not meeting what is needed, and the extra cost is going to come at you. So the shift in the mindset with Symmetrics is that you can continuously measure what's important for you, and in the different lenses that you want to put on, and eventually continuously you can make sure that the policy for insurance or other stuff is being enforced, and not only once you need it. So it's the other way around. It will tell you, you will get notified when you are breaching the policies that you need to not to breach.
All right. If there are no more questions, I will wrap up with a few words about symmetrics and how you can get in touch with us later on. Feel free to, if you have more questions, just to pop them as we go. So we are Symmetrics. We are a cyber performance management platform, but we are also data fabric, really depending on which you're discussing, for risk management, because we are doing all the behind the scenes for customers to be able to get ahead of the measurement. So we have onboarded a customer 3 hours ago, a medical devices company. They have probably 2 hours ago when I stepped home, they have connected two tools, and by now they're already looking at the metrics and setting up policies. We are eliminating all the work from the operational tools to the ability to continuously measure and enforce policies. We have around 80 integrations that we are supporting. We could say we have 200 plus measurements, but eventually it's endless because you can take any one of our metrics and then start filtering them. It's probably going to get to endless numbers because there's so many combinations of measurements you can create with symmetrics. We have a free trial you can apply for. So basically get an environment, start connecting your tools and understand how it looks, feel. Happy to set some more, one-on-one demos, or you can apply for a test drive and see how our platform operates on data that we have in our environment. This is something we're seeing more and more customers are excited about. We love what we're doing. We are eliminating hundreds of hours of customers' work. And yeah, hold on. I'm seeing Brian writing here something else. Shall I see if you can read that, and I will continue talking. I cannot read and talk together.
And
Really, we would like to put our customers ahead of the breach of the policies. And it's funny, we have one customer is not from the US, but north to the US, without naming names of other countries, that actually gave us the folder of policies and told us, I need this in symmetrics, because he knows he was doing, the same efforts, but not connecting them together. So this is really the first place you can see everything together, all the metrics in one place, all the metrics for different users, BISOs, CISOs, product owners. All of those users need their own subset of metrics, but all of them eventually needs to be working together and synchronized in a way that we can eventually show ourselves that we are secured or know our risk, on the spot, and then naturally also go and report this to our peers, auditors, naturally the board. Would love to yes, was there something I missed in the Q&A there?
it wasn't a question, but just Brian saying that that's exactly what he meant regarding the insurance
Good.
and everything. Yeah,
Glad to hear.
that's a great comment, Brian. Thank you.
Good. So I appreciate the 35 minutes of the time you invested in us. I said it's not going to be more than 40, 45 minutes. I don't think we need to take more of your time. Really appreciate your presence here and happy to continue the discussion offline. We are all available either here, LinkedIn, email. Feel free to reach out. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Thanks, Shai.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Shirley. Bye-bye.
Bye.